Well, when Todd Howard said that Starfield is going to be a modder's paradise, I was excited, but I don't think he meant what's actually happened today. This is a bit of a surprise video, but it's one that feels rather inevitable because we live in a world where, for a lot of people, their ability to play a game is kind of held at ransom to if they're able to get various different proprietary graphical technologies, such as DLSS. And that is where today's video starts. And that's because less than a week into the existence of Starfield, we do have PureDark, who is a performance modder who has managed to achieve over $40,000 per month on his Patreon. And this is as a result of providing access to DLSS 3 for Starfield, but behind that paywall, as well as his previous modding work. Now, of course, even after Patreon takes their cut on all of that, this is still a hefty amount of money. Now, think about this, right? There's the market, right? What are people willing to pay for? We're in a situation where there is clearly a desire for something, so somebody has stepped up, filled that gap in the market. What's, I think, notable here is that this isn't just one person making a Starfield mod. This is like his shtick, right? Performance modding stuff, putting DLSS into games. And it kind of shows that that is a broader problem, that for so many gamers, actually access to DLSS is a major part of whether they'll even be able to play a game in a way that they feel is acceptable, or perhaps even in a way that they actually expect from their hardware, as we do unfortunately also live in a world where I would say optimization and that sort of thing isn't really where it should be. And that's often not the fault of the actual developers of these games, it's the fault of timelines, those who make them, how unshakable those timelines are, and how when somebody 5 levels up the management chain sets a deadline, and then there's millions of dollars of marketing spend on all sides and all these things that have got to come together in perfect timing, that it's a logistical nightmare that ultimately for the coders, for the programmers who are working on these games, they just run out of time, and perhaps their companies don't always have the priorities that they should have. And of course, seeing this, Bethesda and Valve are probably having a bit of a chuckle over the old paid mods thing. This is actually what they said whenever they stepped away from that, saying, stepping into an established years-old modding community in Skyrim was probably not the right place to start iterating. Well, in Starfield, that ain't a problem. Now, obviously, this is a number that has spiked up because of Starfield's launch, but PureDark has actually done previous work updating DLSS into a whole bunch of games, with one of them being Jedi Survivor, a game that I think we all know that would provide a lot of value for. And then it's that funny thing where this is actual technical implementation. This is technical work that a company should do, that people working for that company will be paid for. So yeah, we have a modder doing it, and in this case, yeah, he does expect that if he's going to put in all of this work, that there should be some money on the other side of it. So I suppose every time AMD end up being the graphics partner for a game, he's probably having a little bit of a cheer to himself. Now, the funny thing is, DLSS is an open source bit of software in its implementation, even though it's locked to the NVIDIA cards, and that does just make this process a bit more convenient. But yeah, basically anyone with some technical support can manage this sort of thing. And the business model is interesting because PureDark is actually doing a free version of the mod with DLSS 2, but DLSS 3, that's the thing that's behind the paywall. Now, that in itself is actually quite fascinating. DLSS 3 is only available on the 40 series cards, right? Now, if you have a 4090, you probably don't have to worry that much, and you probably don't need frame generation. But I've been skiting around YouTube, right, looking at people who are running Starfield on their, on 4060s. And the facts are, Starfield actually does struggle on a 4060. As an example here is some testing that Tom's Hardware did, right? Now, this is 1080p with FSR2 100% scaling, medium settings, right? This is not going to set the world on fire. With that, a 4090 is hitting, it's hitting an average of 137, but the thing that matters the most is the 1% low, which is 108. Now, that's fine, but if we zoom on down to take a look at a 4060, you do see situations not great. So the 4060 Ti, a card that is widely considered to be a not particularly good value prop. This is again FSR2 100% scaling. That is getting 71.3 average with 58. 3088 as the 1%, which is just about acceptable. But if you drop that down to the 4060, which is the $300 card, you're looking at 1% lows of 47 FPS. Now, again, this is 1080p medium, right? Those are low-ass settings. This is the sort of situation you would expect this to be maybe 1080p high, right? With no scaling. And for a $300, which, I mean, man, that used to be the mid-range, you know? So this is a case where somebody with a 4060 not having DLSS 3 really screws them. They might be better actually having, say, a 3070 that costs just about the same amount of money, especially used, and has more raw horsepower, right? That's the crazy situation, and that is how not having DLSS in a major game for somebody with a new generation graphics card, like, that's why there's actually going to be money here. That's the crazy situation that we're really in here, with frame generation being used as a bit of a crutch, but also a total moat for the card manufacturers. And for Nvidia, this is a fairly major loss, because this is one of the biggest games of the year, maybe the biggest game of the year. Their entire business model is that their more affordable card just uses frame generation to actually survive. The game doesn't support it. That's bad for Nvidia too. So who should be getting paid for this, right? Let's have that discussion. Is it right to be paid for, a mod on other people's work? Is it right to charge for something that people expect to be part of the core game, like with DLSS? Obviously, it would be wrong if, Bethesda charged for that, but if a third-party person who's making a mod, does that, what about the idea of a Patreon subscription to support making a mod? Should that subscription be something where, it's not actually paywalling the mod, but it is there so people can support the creator? I think most people would agree, yeah, take donations for your hard work. That's cool. But a lot of people would also say, yeah, but that relies on a lot of goodwill, and it maybe wouldn't actually work. Kind of a valid discussion, right? And if the paywall was the only blocker here, that would kind of be the end of the story. We'd sort of leave in those woolly questions. But that's not the end of the story, because Pure Dark has, of course, learned one of the age-old rules of software, and that is that as soon as you ask somebody to pay for something, somebody else will say, aha, challenge accepted, and try to work on a crack. So, going back, of course, to Valve and Bethesda's, Skyrim efforts, this is the real problem. There is effectively nothing stopping somebody from, downloading a mod on that service, then re-uploading it and profiting, So we get into that murky situation where there's the idea of the paid mods, but then you go to the implementation where there can be bad behavior, degenerate behavior. You can, of course, then just have, people cracking the stuff. And that's where we've got to dive into today. And by the way, if you enjoy these deep dives into the gaming news that we do every day, be sure to subscribe to the channel. It really does help. And it's not just me, right? We don't got a team of a bunch of people, and it means whenever I actually sit down here, we've went through these stories, we brought together all the evidence so that you can be, entertained, but hopefully also well-informed. So your support is appreciated, and with that said, let's then go. In Pure Dark's case, then, it was adding DRM to his paid DLSS 3 mod at the download that was the problem. And you can imagine how that went. Behave like a greedy AAA publisher, get treated as one, said one Redditor. Patreon locked mods are a cancer in the gaming community. Adding DRM is a whole other level of shitty. What an ass. So yes, parts of this were seen as a step too far. Some people kind of argue that this is maybe a bit based this as a complaint, because people were perfectly happy to download from a Patreon link before they knew that it was going to be, validating a level of ownership. But for most people, it's not really to do with the Patreon link. It's to do with, an objection on a more fundamental level. Their computers are their computers. Nobody's got the right to go around snooping anything. So the idea that your mod is doing any degree of, phoning home, right? That's just not something we're okay with. I think people can perhaps accept invasive like anti-cheat measures for a game like Valorant as a way that they get to play Valorant. But for a mod, that sort of thing is not exactly what people expect. Also, then, the Pure Dark was seen as having a fairly significant income from all of this, all this modding work. For a lot of people, that's, a little bit too much, especially the DRM thing. A lot of people are saying, hey, you're kind of getting enough money already. Do you really need to go and do the DRM? Now, this, of course, then led to the next logical part of the process, which is the cracking of the DRM. So yes, we now are in a situation where there are cracks for mods. You can have, I suppose, a cracked version of a game and then install a cracked mod on it to dodge every single paywall you can, which is a bit weird. Really didn't see that one coming. And of course, for people who are, really trying to advocate for like anti-DRM in all cases, this is a fantastic story for them, right? It's seen as like, hey, you got too greedy, you broke the social contract, now you're gone. Really though, we've got to deal with a broader cultural issue here. Should modders in a world be compensated for their work? What do you think about that? And this is one of the challenging things. There is certainly something to the notion that if somebody can make a living, right? If somebody can make a living doing something, then they can do more of that thing, they can specialize in that thing, and then we all benefit because they're able to do that. A good example is, I suppose, with YouTube and the YouTube Partner Program. I've been around since before the partnership program existed as a viewer, and now we have situations where, as an example, like I've got, 8 people, is it? I think 8 people on our media team. There's also our game development team. And, at least for the media side of what I do, because we can earn money in YouTube, I'm able to invest in a team. So instead of me just, finding a PC Gamer article or something and, reacting to that live, I'm able to have, my team does the research, actually, fact checks the stuff, goes around to find all the context, brings it all together in a document for me. And that means that I can do a better job for you. But the thing is, that is by default ad supported, which does mean that at the point of access, it is free. So I think therefore people were okay with it. It's an entirely different thing if it is a paywall. And I think that's ultimately what we're running into here. In many places, like say Fortnite, Roblox, though there's certainly some issues there, there's a situation where people can, they can make mods, they can make game modes, things like that, and they can actually be remunerated for that. However, often that doesn't involve a direct handover of money from the consumer. It's a bit of a challenging thing. Take an example like Falskar, the really big Skyrim mod, or I forget the name of it. It's the one made by the German mod team, who also made an absolutely incredible narrative mod for Oblivion. Some people would say, well, all right, if those people could earn, let's just say 400 grand, enough to have, a team of people working for a few years to actually make the thing, then that would be fairly good. An example of a great project that I'm pretty excited for, actually, is Fallout London. This is a fairly amazing mod to Fallout. It's actually so damn impressive that multiple team members for it, or at least one of them, actually worked in Starfield because they got hired by Bethesda. And there is just that kind of idea of, if they, if there was some way where you could buy this as if it was a DLC, that they'd be able to be, a full mod team. Instead of it being people's spare time, it could actually be people's full job. And now you could have a situation where instead of having to rely on Bethesda to make a few DLCs or, a few mod teams sort of scattered around the place, you could perhaps have 2, 3, 4, 5 almost miniature studios who are just making content in Fallout for you. To some people, that sounds like a really good thing. To a lot of other people, though, it's kind of changing up what a mod is. So I don't have the answers. I'm not pretending to, but that's definitely the thing to talk about. But to go back to this particular situation, it does ultimately seem like it's given Pure Dark more patrons than he had since before the original Reddit post was published that led to the whole thing exploding, right? 9,217 members on that Patreon. And in terms of price, that is, the supporter tier there is basically £4.50 a month plus value-added tax here. So, that's kind of what you're looking at from the price point. Ultimately, then, it's that situation where paywalls can feel rough, but if it is something that somebody can very tangibly access, they're probably going to spend that money. Because right now, you're dealing with people who bought a 4060, 4070 maybe, 4060 Ti, and they want that, they want more performance. I mean, even if you have the 4060 Ti, maybe even a 4070, and you want to run this game 1440p, on decent settings, you're really going to be struggling, and this is going to be very high value to you. And if you think about the people who really had this surge, they are PC gamers who already purchased Starfield in early access, which means like they are going to be, of all of the likely customers for this mod project, they're going to be the most likely to pony up. It's like you've already spent, I don't know, £35, £30 over here. Maybe that's like $30, $40. They've already spent that to play the game early. What is $5 to them to be able to play the game early and at a frame rate and, graphical settings that they actually feel comfortable playing, right? It is what it is. It's an interesting situation. I would love to know what you think about this one. And I suppose there's that other sort of side where you're like, you have found a gap in the market, you have went in there in a laser-targeted way, and, you're getting that bag. And then one side I'm like, critical profiteering. On the other side, it's like, well, you've got some chutzpah, it's entrepreneurial. Where do you fall on that side? Let me know. Of course, Starfield will be fully out tomorrow, which will mean we'll get to see its Steam review. We'll actually get to see how big the swell of concurrent players on Steam who did not purchase early access would be, as well as, of course, many other stories. So be sure to watch this video next after this one, and check back here tomorrow for some more content. Have a great day. I'll see you next time.